German U-boat service. Atlantic Ocean. 1943. Early morning, just after dawn. At dawn, the ocean told a convincing story. Through the periscope, the U-boat commander watched the torpedo strike exactly where he had aimed. The impact was clean, a sharp flash. A column of water and debris punched upward from the convoy's center. For a moment, the target disappeared entirely behind spray and smoke. Then came the fragments. Wood, cargo, dark shapes tumbling across the surface. Inside the control room, the confirmation felt immediate. The hydrophone operator reported the unmistakable sounds of structural failure, metal tearing, water rushing into spaces never meant to be wet. These were the noises crews were trained to recognize. These were the sounds that meant a ship was done. The logbook entry was written without drama. Confirmed hit, probable sinking. The U-boat slipped deeper, engines reduced, already thinking ahead. A successful attack at dawn was ideal. Confusion above, escorts distracted. A window to reposition, reload, and perhaps strike again before the conv could reorganize. This was how the Atlantic War usually worked. Hit, disappear, let panic do the rest. From below, everything supported that assumption. The convoy's formation broke slightly, some ships altered course, smoke lingered on the surface. The damaged vessel did not continue in line. To the U-boat crew, this looked like victory in progress. What they could not see was what was happening on the ship they believed destroyed. Above the waterline, the target was badly hurt, but alive. The torpedo had not struck the magazines. It had not broken the keel. It had flooded compartments, damaged engines, and knocked out power, but the hull still held. More importantly, the crew responded immediately. Damage control parties were already moving before the spray settled. Watertight doors slammed shut. Pumps came online. Fires were isolated instead of spreading. Men worked without waiting for orders, following drills practiced endlessly for exactly this moment. The ship slowed, but it did not stop. Around it, the convoy did something else the U-boat could not hear from below. It closed ranks. Escorts did not scatter in panic. They tightened their screen. One destroyer moved in toward the damaged ship, not to abandon it, but to protect it. Others fanned out, hunting not randomly, but deliberately, assuming the attacker was still close. This was the change in 1943. A torpedo hit no longer ended the fight. It began a process. Below the surface, the U-boat settled into what felt like safety. The commander allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The dawn attack had worked. Another ship removed from the Allied supply chain, another mark in the log. But above him, the convoy was already proving that the story written at dawn would not be the story told by sunset. The ship he believed sunk was still afloat. The convoy was still moving. And the escorts were already adjusting, not to loss, but to resistance. The kill looked certain. The failure had already begun. The torpedo had done real damage, but not decisive damage. What saved the ship was not luck, it was preparation layered on preparation. By 1943, Allied merchant crews had learned to expect hits and survive them. Hulls were compartmentalized. Crews drilled for flooding, fire, and power loss until reaction became reflex. When the explosion hit, watertight doors closed automatically and manually within seconds. Compartments that flooded did so in isolation. The list increased briefly, then stabilized as counter-flooding corrected balance. Pumps were started before officers finished assessing damage. Most importantly, panic never took over. Men knew their roles. Teams moved directly to known weak points. Electrical power was rerouted around damaged circuits. Engines were stopped, not because they had failed completely, but because running them would have worsened flooding. Survival came before speed. From a distance, the ship looked finished. Smoke poured from vents. It lagged behind the formation. Debris still floated. To a periscope view, This was exactly what a sinking ship looked like in its early stages. But sinking is not a moment. It is a race. And the crew was winning it. Above the wounded vessel, escorts altered their behavior immediately. One destroyer moved in close, not to tow yet, but to act as a shield. Smoke screens were laid. Guns were trained outward, not inward. The assumption was simple. The attacker was nearby, and the damaged ship was bait. This assumption was correct. The convoy did not scatter. That alone marked a change from earlier in the war. Ships tightened spacing to reduce exposure. Speed was adjusted collectively, not individually. The formation absorbed the damage instead of fracturing. This denied the U-boat its usual advantage. There was no widening gap to exploit, no isolated straggler begging for a second torpedo. The convoy's response turned a vulnerable moment into a controlled one. Inside the damaged ship, the captain made a decision that mattered more than anything else that day. He stayed in formation. At reduced speed, yes, but within protective distance. The ship would live or die surrounded by escorts, not alone in open water. That choice kept the U-boat from finding a second opportunity, even if it wanted to. By mid-morning, the fires were out. Flooding was contained. The ship was wounded but stable. Below the surface, the U-boat heard only partial truth. Hydrophone contacts were confused by escort movement. The convoy's tightened formation sounded larger, not weaker. The presumed sinking did not produce the acoustic collapse expected from a hull breaking apart. That absence went unnoticed, because the crew already believed the story was finished. The escorts did not celebrate. They hunted. The moment the torpedo detonated, escort doctrine took over. The explosion did not signal loss, it signaled presence. Somewhere nearby, a submarine had revealed itself by firing. That narrowed the ocean from thousands of square miles to a problem measured in minutes. ASDIC operators focused immediately. Noise from the explosion cluttered the water, but trained ears filtered it out. They were not listening for debris. They were listening for continuity, propeller beats, course changes, depth shifts. The escorts assumed the U-boat had gone deep and slow. So they went shallow and methodical. Instead of charging blindly, they held contact zones, rotating ships through sonar sweeps. One destroyer stayed close to the damaged merchantman. Others widened the ring, not to search randomly, but to deny escape routes. Depth charges were prepared, not fired immediately. Patience mattered. The escorts understood something U-boat crews often underestimated by 1943. A missed or non-fatal torpedo hit did not reset the fight. It focused it. The submarine was now the hunted. Throughout the morning, the convoy advanced steadily. Speed was maintained just enough to keep pressure on the escort screen. Every hour that passed without a second attack increased confidence, not complacency, but control. The U-boat had expected confusion. Instead, it encountered discipline. ASDIC contacts flickered. A bearing stabilized briefly, then faded. The escorts adjusted quietly. A depth charge pattern was dropped, not to kill, but to probe. The explosions were distant, but close enough to force the submarine deeper and slower. Each probe narrowed options. By noon, the convoy had reformed completely. The damaged ship still lagged, but it lagged inside protection. Repair crews rigged temporary patches. Pumps continued to work. The ocean did not claim it. The escorts never lost urgency. They rotated watches. They conserved fuel. They planned for the long afternoon ahead. Below, the U-boat commander listened as depth charge detonations echoed faintly. Not close enough to damage, but close enough to warn. He ordered quiet running, convinced the danger would pass as it often had before. What he did not realize was that the escorts were not reacting anymore. They were controlling. Time is the enemy of a submarine under contact. As the afternoon wore on, the U-boat's options narrowed. Batteries drained slowly. Air grew stale. Condensation ran down steel bulkheads. Men spoke in whispers that felt louder than explosions. The commander waited for the moment escorts usually drifted away. It never came. Instead, the pressure stayed constant. ASDIC pings returned intermittently, not continuous, but frequent enough to deny comfort. Every few hours, another depth charge pattern forced the boat deeper, slower, quieter. The U-boat was not being attacked. It was being held. This was the escort tactic refined in 1943, continuous harassment without committing to a kill until certainty was high. The goal was exhaustion, not drama. Inside the submarine, the realization grew uncomfortable. The convoy had not slowed. The escorts had not dispersed. And no second opportunity had appeared. The dawn attack that felt like victory had produced none of the usual advantages. No chaos, no stragglers, no second firing solution. By late afternoon, battery levels were low enough to matter. The commander considered surfacing after dark, but escort positions suggested that even night would not offer freedom. The convoy had turned the tables. The U-boat, not the merchantman, was now fighting to survive the day. By midday, the damaged merchant ship should have been gone. In earlier years of the war, a torpedo hit at dawn usually meant disappearance by noon. Flooding spread, engines failed, crews abandoned ship. Escorts marked the position and moved on. This ship did none of that. Inside the hull, damage control teams worked without pause. Flooded compartments were sealed off permanently. Temporary shoring reinforced weakened frames. Pumps ran continuously, not to restore normalcy, but to maintain equilibrium. The goal was no longer speed or efficiency. It was survival within formation. The ship's captain understood something the U-boat commander did not. Staying alive mattered more than moving fast. Engines were kept at minimum sustainable output. Steering was adjusted slowly to avoid stressing damaged sections. Every decision prioritized endurance over performance. From the outside, the ship looked finished. Smoke still drifted, the hull rode low, paint was scorched. To a periscope glance, it appeared doomed. But the convoy treated it as active. Escorts adjusted their screen to keep the wounded vessel inside the protective envelope. One destroyer remained close, not for towing, but for deterrence. The message was clear: this ship stays with us. That choice denied the submarine everything it wanted. There was no isolated target. No straggler. No second shot. The torpedo hit had created damage, but not opportunity. By early afternoon, the ship's status stabilized. It was not healthy, it was not fast, but it was afloat, controlled, and defended. That was enough. In modern convoy warfare, sinking was no longer about visible destruction. It was about whether the system absorbed the blow. And here, the system held. While the merchant crew fought water and fire, the escorts fought patience. They did not chase shadows. They did not scatter. They did not assume success or failure. They assumed contact. ASDIC operators maintained disciplined sweeps, rotating frequencies and angles to avoid false confidence. Each destroyer covered a sector, not randomly, but deliberately, closing off likely escape paths while keeping the convoy moving. Depth charges were used sparingly. Not to kill, to shape behavior. A distant pattern forced the U-boat deeper, another limited speed. Each detonation narrowed options without committing to a full attack. The escorts were not looking for drama. They were looking for control. This approach denied the submarine its greatest strength, unpredictability. The longer the U-boat stayed submerged, the more batteries drained. The more it slowed, the less maneuver freedom remained. By afternoon, the escorts had achieved their real objective. The submarine was contained. The convoy did not need to destroy it immediately. It only needed to survive the day. Every hour that passed intact reduced the strategic value of the attack. And the escorts understood that perfectly. Below the surface, doubt crept in slowly. The commander replayed the dawn attack in his mind. The hit had been good. The signs had been correct. Everything had matched experience. So why was nothing breaking apart? Hydrophone reports grew less encouraging. The convoy sounded tighter, not weaker. Escort screws never faded completely. Depth charge patterns returned just often enough to deny comfort. This was no longer evasion. It was endurance. Battery levels dropped into caution zones. Air quality worsened. Every decision now carried cost. The commander considered surfacing after nightfall, but escort movement suggested they would be waiting. The most unsettling realization followed. The torpedo had not reset the battle. It had triggered it. Instead of confusion above, there was coordination. Instead of panic, there was method. The convoy had absorbed the blow and turned the engagement into a slow grind. The submarine could not win. The U-boat was alive, but it was losing the day. By sunset, the truth was undeniable. The damaged ship still floated. The convoy still moved. The escorts still held formation. What had looked like victory at dawn now looked like a strategic miss. The U-boat had expended a torpedo, one of a limited supply, for no lasting effect. It had revealed its presence, it had surrendered initiative, and it had gained nothing in return except risk. For the convoy, sunset marked success. Not triumph. Not celebration. Confirmation. The system had worked, damage control had held, escort doctrine had functioned, the supply line remained intact. The Atlantic had delivered its verdict. This was not a failure of gunnery. It was a failure of effect. By 1943, submarine warfare was no longer judged by explosions alone. It was judged by outcomes. Did tonnage disappear? Did convoys break apart? Did supplies stop moving? None of that happened. The U-boat achieved noise, not disruption. The convoy achieved continuity. That distinction defined the later Atlantic War. Submarines could still hit ships, but hits no longer guaranteed strategic success. Survival systems had caught up. Escorts had learned patience. Convoys had learned cohesion. Victory now required collapse. And collapse did not occur. The German U-boat logged a kill at dawn because the signs looked right. Explosion. Debris. Silence. In 1943, those signs were no longer decisive. The convoy did not break, the ship did not sink, the escorts did not panic. By sunset, the supply line was intact, and the submarine was the one constrained. The ocean had not changed. The system had. This was the quiet defeat that defined the late Atlantic War, not dramatic losses, but missed effects. Attacks that looked successful, yet achieved nothing lasting. By sunset, the truth was clear. The U-boat had fired well. The convoy had survived better. And in a war of logistics, survival mattered more than spectacle.